I'm Christy, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Here I like to talk about mythology, folklore, conspiracies, controversies, and pretty much anything else I like. So if any of that sounds like the kind of thing that you like, then you should probably subscribe to this channel so that you can see all of my videos. I look a little bit on the sweaty side today. I just got finished doing yoga and I'm sure that I've actually got Biscoff spread on my top as well. Very impromptu video, just thought fuck it, I'll film it now, why not? So today we are talking about the Blood Countess, the Bloody Lady, and the speculated inspiration behind Bram Stoker's Dracula, Elizabeth Bathory. So in Hungarian her name is this. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it, I'm just going to call her Elizabeth. She was born on August 7th, 1560, so a fiery Leo queen. She was a Hungarian noblewoman from the Protestant family Bathory, and her family owned a lot of land in Hungary. I'm laughing because I know fuck all about Hungary or like being a noblewoman, I'm just saying stuff. Her father was a baron, her mother was a baroness, and her uncle Stephen was the King of Poland, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, and the Prince of Transylvania, so he was doing alright for himself. And throughout her childhood, Elizabeth suffered from seizures, probably due to undiagnosed epilepsy. That's about as much information as I'm giving you on her childhood. In 1575, she married a nobleman called Ferenc Nadasty. About time, Lizzie, sweetheart. You're 15 now. Come on.
15 and no husband. You must put those birthing hips to good use at once, lest your womb shrivel up and die.
It's also said that before marrying Ferenc, I'm going to go with Ferenc. It's also said that before marrying him, she actually did give birth to a child. And not only was this child out of wedlock, it was with a lower class man, a commoner. Ugh. Nadasdy was humiliated and disgusted that his wife-to-be had been tainted in this way. So he apparently, don't sue me, I mean you've been dead for literally hundreds of years. He ordered that the baby be sent out of sight so that no one knew that it existed, and Elizabeth's lover, he was castrated and then fed to blood-hungry dogs who tore him to pieces. Elizabeth and Nadasdy together, after being married, they went on to have 4 children together, but Elizabeth wasn't going to let something as small and insignificant as being married and having 4 babies get in the way of her having a little fun. It's said that while he was away on his various trips doing whatever it is that noblemen do, you know, back in those days they were always away doing some shit, Elizabeth is said to have taken many a lover when he was away. Nadasdy died in 1604 after having some sort of illness that crippled him. For the last few years he had lost the ability to use his legs and he'd become paralysed, and they suspected that this is whatever was wrong with him is what led to his eventual death. And after he died, some rumours about Elizabeth started to surface that made having the odd affair or two seem not so bad in comparison. Over the years, many young servant girls had mysteriously went missing, never to be seen again, but no one really batted an eyelid. After all, they're only peasants, who really cares what happened to them? But when young noble women and young girls of like a higher status started to disappear, people started to take notice and grew concerned about what was happening. In 1610, King Matthias assigned Gregory Thurzo, the Count Palatine of Hungary, and also Elizabeth's cousin, to get on the case and find out what the hell was happening. People were suspecting that Elizabeth had something to do with these young girls going missing, and it was Gregory. I'm going to call him Gregory. Hold on. So he was the one that was on the case to try and figure out what Elizabeth's involvement in these young women going missing was. Between 1610 and 1611, he had managed to gather over 300 witness statements and testimonies from survivors that had some pretty fucking wild claims against Elizabeth Bathory. And on December 10th, 1610, Elizabeth's castle was stormed and she was arrested. It's believed that yes, she was responsible for all of these young girls and women going missing, but not only that, it's also believed by some people that she had over 600 victims. And what was she doing with them? Well, not only was she kidnapping and murdering them, but she was brutally torturing them. Not only that, she was also casting spells and rituals with their blood. And one of the most popular theories for what she was actually doing with all of these young women was that she was bathing in the blood of virgins so that she could keep her youth and beauty. And she believed that using this blood in some sort of magic ritual would allow her to stay young and beautiful. Other reports say that she kept her victims tied up for days with their hands and feet bound so tightly that blood circulation was stopped. Their hands and feet would turn blue until eventually they would burst and spurt blood. She burned and branded her victims just for pleasure, and she even inserted a roasting hot iron rod into the vagina of some of her women victims. She apparently cut off people's genitalia, even biting off their genitalia. She starved people and deprived them of water for days on end until they eventually got so thirsty, and when they did, she would force them to drink their own urine. There was a report that she covered a young girl's naked body in honey and then flung her outside tied up so that she would be eaten alive by ants and other insects. She kept the corpses of 5 victims underneath her bed, and she still fed them and stuff and acted like they were still alive. I mean, she won't feed her victims who are actually alive, but she's feeding the corpses. Also, this reminded me of the Daisy Arrives thing. See if you've watched my video, which is, I think it's called like Things That Freak Me the Fuck Out. And I talk about the Daisy Arrives, and there's a thing where he's got the corpse in the bathtub and he's like feeding her with a spoon. This just reminded me of that, and I got triggered again. She forced her victims to cook and eat their own flesh. And among all that, there was stabbing, strangling, torture with stinging nettles. She stitched people's lips together, cut off pieces of their flesh and noses with scissors. She beat people bloody until they were completely unrecognisable. And she even cast a spell to summon a cloud filled with 90 cats that would stalk and torture her victims, which kinda a girl boss move, not gonna lie. And this honestly is the very briefly summarised list of the shit that this woman is meant to have done. It is fucking wild, all the claims that were against her. It even says that when her castle was stormed and she was arrested, she was caught in the act right then and there, with one of our servants who'd been beaten bloody, was like cowering and crying in the corner, close to death but still alive, and she was in the middle of burying a fresh corpse. Along with Elizabeth, some of her servants were also arrested for being accomplice to her crimes. Most of these were like older women. These women had their fingers pulled off with iron tongs, and then they were flung on a fire pit to burn alive. And she did have one male accomplice as well, but he was decapitated before being flung on the fire. I don't know why he got the courtesy of dying and not having his fingers pulled off and not burning alive. I assume because he's a man, but King Matthias really wanted Elizabeth to be tried and executed as well, but Thurzo really was against this because he says it would bring so much shame on his family and it would look really, really terrible for the family if it was, you know, she was executed for all of this shit that she'd done. And I genuinely think the punishment that she did have was so much fucking worse than if they just killed her. They bricked her in a single room in her castle that didn't have any windows. It didn't even have a door. They just bricked her up and left a very small slit that air could get into and that they could pass food underneath, and that was it. That's where she just stayed, in this one single tiny room all bricked up. And she stayed there for, I've seen some reports saying 3 years and some reports saying 4 years. Either way, she stayed there until eventually she died. And honestly, what a sweet relief that must have been. Now, you might have very little sympathy for Elizabeth. After all, she had over 600 victims. You know, you get what you give, you reap what you sow type thing. You might be thinking, well, she deserved it. Well, maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's entirely impossible that she done all of this stuff. Of course, it definitely is possible. But as we know, women have been vilified throughout history, and sometimes even for very little reason. Sometimes a woman would like fucking know how to read and should be burnt at the stake. Or you'd have a bit of PMS and you'd be flung into a lunatic asylum. Like, I feel like people, like, honestly, I mean, sometimes still, they would take any fucking opportunity to call a woman a witch or crazy or deranged, you know. So I'm not saying that she didn't do this stuff. I'm just saying she might not have. And although it is like a very cool story that there was this like woman who was like a fucking female Dracula and she bathed in the blood of virgins and all of that, and like it makes like a really good story, I'm just saying it's entirely possible that it's completely exaggerated or not true at all. First of all, this was so long ago that it would be impossible to have entirely accurate details of exactly what happened. And most of the witness statements for the things that she done was entirely just hearsay. A lot of it wasn't like, oh, I seen her doing this. It was like, oh, I heard that she done this. Listen, man, right, it was the 15 and 1600s. I'm not judging. There was fuck all to do but sit around and chat shit about everybody. So I'm not judging for it, but all I'm saying is things could have been massively, like, exaggerated. Like, if somebody tells, like, a bunch of people that literally have fuck all else to do, like, oh my god, the countess that stays in that castle is not only a horrible bitch, but she's a blood-hungry, virgin-killing witch. People are going to be like, oh my god, like, she's a blood-hungry... You know what I mean? It's going to get people talking, especially back then when I feel like people were so religious that they were so terrified of things like this. So if she was doing, I'm not going to say normal stuff, but I'm going to say like if she was like being like a horrible, nasty person and like a woman in power at the same time, people might be like, oh my god, she's a witch, instead of, yeah, she is just like a bitch. Not only that, but a lot of the witnesses that actually testified against her were tortured into telling what they knew. So how reliable really is someone who's been tortured? At what point do they just go, yeah, fuck it, okay, right, I seen her bathing in the blood of virgins, right, leave me alone. And remember, she never even had a trial, so she never even got to tell her version of events at all. And her cousin Thurzo, who was the one that was leading the investigation, might just have set her up, who says that he didn't want to just take her down and thought that now that her husband was dead and she was a widow and who is she to like kick about running the show, like, might just have thought that she was an easier target. And I think as well, like, her other cousin, Gabor, he really wanted the throne, and I think Thurzo was maybe worried that the two of them would get married to each other and kind of, like, rule together, and he was like, fuck no, not having that, taking Elizabeth down before that fucking happens. I don't know, man, people, like, done weird shit for the throne, you know? I mean, obviously, unless you get a past life regression and you were actually there, we'll probably never know what actually happened. All I'm saying is, although it's a cool story, it probably isn't as black and white as that. So while I was doing my research for this video, I found a really cool website, and it is called rejectedprincesses.com. So if you like stories like this, but they're delivered in a kind of fun, more light-hearted way, then I feel like you will really like this website, and whoever it is that owns the website seems to do like artwork along with the stories that they do. So if you're into that and you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy that website as well. Well, that's it for today. I hope that you have enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, and that will give you good karma. Comment down below what you think. Did she do it? Did she not? What's your opinion on it? Please subscribe as well. Why the hell not? And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!